Nerd, and you are attending the August 2014 Worldox virtual user group meeting. Now you're wondering, why is Paul so confused? Has he been drinking at lunch? No, he has not. But something happened with the recording that we made when we actually performed this virtual user group meeting, or held this virtual user group meeting last Monday. And so we are re-recording this Worldox virtual user group meeting for those of us that listen to them in a recorded mode. So I'm not going to go through all the stuff that you may have seen in other virtual user group meetings that are recorded, where I explain the GoToWebinar control panel, because you don't have that. You're watching a video. And at the end, you'll notice I'm not going to talk about the topics next month, because, again, you're not going to mark your calendars and attend it live because you're watching a video. We know that. So we're just going to launch right in and talk about two topics. Mary Jo is going to talk specifically about using group security within the Worldox admin. I'm going to help her a little bit with that topic, and then I'm going to talk for a very brief while about offline mode, because people have seen it. They don't know what it is. We're not going to get into a lot of detail because hopefully you don't see it. It's one of those things that happens when there's a problem. So we'll start without any further ado with Mary Jo telling us all about, after I click on the right buttons here, telling us all about group security in Worldox WDADMIN.
So as Paul said, we're continuing our journey through WDADMIN. If we go into our WDADMIN window here, you should be familiar with this over our last few sessions. If I click on Edit, I have a Group Security button here. If I go under Security, I also have Groups. So either way takes you to the same place, either Security Groups or Edit Group Security. Same thing. So we're going to go into this window, and you're going to see all kinds of fun stuff in here. And the first thing that we're going to talk about, and I think, Paul, I think you're going to tell us how to create a user group and what we will do with that. And then we're each going to take turns and just kind of tell you about each of the different features within group security. So, Paul? Okay.
Well, the group security, as the name implies, revolves around the concept of groups. And so we have the ability to define those groups. Now, you'll notice here we have 3 groups already. Everything starts with an everyone. Okay? So if there were no other groups defined and you came in here, all you would see is the everyone group. Now, we have created, I guess that's not quite true, the Worldox Managers group will also, it's not all, Mary Jo's shaking her head, no, okay. So that's also something that we've created in our system. But we created the confidential group. We were looking at our Attorney Computer Systems group and and there is a confidential group that holds gives that group of users access to certain documents, certain profile groups. In a law firm, you might have a partners group, you might have an attorneys group, a legal assistance group, you might have a Worldox Managers group that would contain certain people. So the first question to answer is, why don't we just give whatever we want to give to the individuals? Because as you'll see as we go on, that you can take certain features or certain profile groups, or you can build ethical walls, which is another way to restrict access, or you can do it by paths and folders, and you can assign these features or take these features away from a group, or you can assign these profile groups or take these profile groups away from a group of people. Why don't we just say Bob and Mary Jo and Paul and Leanne have access to this and Patty doesn't? Or Paul can do this certain feature and Mary Jo can't. Well, because firms change. So if you say, well, all the attorneys are allowed to get into this one group and all the partners are able to go into this other profile group that contains confidential information. Well, if you have a partner that leaves, you then have to individually remove that permission from him. And when a new partner comes in, you have to individually apply those permissions for those profile groups and features to that new partner. Whereas if you build a group and then build all your security, all your access to or blocking from certain features or profile groups around the group, then all you have to do when somebody leaves is take them out of the group. And all you have to do when 2 new partners join the firm or 2 associates become partners is move them into the partners group. And they inherit all the features that have been blocked or allowed and all of the profile groups that have been blocked are allowed for that group. So that's why we build groups. It just makes it easier when somebody leaves or when somebody comes in or when somebody makes a lateral move within the firm and a legal assistant that is now in the accounting group has access to certain things that they didn't before. We just move that legal assistant into the accounting group here, and they inherit those permissions. So how do we create a group? Very, very simple. Now, what we do is we highlight the place where we want this group to be. We have a tree here, and if I were to create a group here by adding a group with the Create button, I would be creating it under Worldox Managers. I'm just going to type test and say OK, and you'll notice I've created it under Worldox Managers. So I really probably didn't mean to do that, but I did it to point out to you that it's important where you are when you create the group. I want this group to be lateral or a subgroup of everyone and kind of a brother-sister sort of arrangement with all the subgroups. So I can create it under everyone, and I'm going to create one called Partners. And yes, I do want it to secure files and objects instead of just controlling which features people have access to or don't have access to. And I can also include members of all groups under this one. Well, I'm not going to check that, but that would pull everybody in automatically. And who sees it? If I want only the people that are in this group to even know that this group exists, then I would leave it the way it is. If instead I want everyone to be able to see this group, I would check everyone. So I have now created a new subgroup of everyone called Partners. And with that subgroup, I can then assign the features, profile groups, ethical walls, paths, and folders to that specific group. And I'm going to turn it back over to Mary Jo, and she's going to move one level over and show us how some of that works.
And I just want to make a quick note here about the Worldox Manager group, because Paul had alluded to the fact that maybe this Worldox Managers group comes in automatically, and it does not. There is a misconception that if you are a manager, you automatically have rights to everything across the board, and that's not necessarily true. There are some features and things in here that you need to actually assign to a manager as well. So just be aware of that, that there are some things that you do need to create a Worldox Manager group for.
And that, of course, is why I made that mistake.
Of course, so that I could point that out. Yes, Paul, we know that. All right, so the users group. So here we have a list of all of our users, and we're using our system, so these are our users. Your list may be much longer than this. It's going to list out everybody that is associated and set up in Worldox as a user. If they're inactive, they're going to be white. If they're green, that means they're an active user.
Oh, Mary Jo, I'm going to interrupt you for a sec. Did we add anyone to this group?
I don't think so.
Okay.
You did not, so I'll talk about that.
Talk about that.
So if you want to add users to this group that Paul created, you would then, as you're highlighted on the group, like if I'm on confidential, I can see that there's 2 people within that confidential group. If I go to partners, we haven't assigned anyone, so if I add users, it's going to give me that list, and I can say that maybe Leanne and I are part of the partners group, and I can include them, and now they're in that group. And so now anytime I assign anything to a feature or a group using the group feature, it'll be Leanne and I in the partner group. So if I go to the users, this is a place then that I can see what rights each user has. So if I go into Leanne, I can see she is a member of the, I'm on the user group here, so I can see she's a member of the confidential partners and manager group. If I want to see what features that Leanne is allowed, I can come in and choose that. We haven't specifically said she's allowed anything, but I also could see if she was blocked, and I think we were using an example in our original webinar, and we actually blocked Patty from something, and then she couldn't use what we needed her to use when we were testing. So we haven't really set any of those up for this one again. But this is where you could actually see what she is allowed and not allowed to do. I also could see what profile groups that she's allowed to be in, any of those things, ethical walls, underneath the user group here.
I'm going to interrupt and point out that our Everyone group allows all the features that we want. Leanne is a member of the Everyone group, so just the fact that she doesn't have any features allowed doesn't mean she's not allowed to do anything. It's just that none have been allowed for her specifically as a user herself.
Right. She's still in the Everyone group. You're right. So that is where you can actually see some different things here. If I wanted to assign or do some features on here by user, we're going to go to the next one with features. And I think, Paul, I'm talking about the features as well. Is that right? And then, so just to see the other side of this, I've got like a whole list of all the features over here, and then I can pick which users are allowed and not allowed to do things. And this is that everyone group that Paul was just talking about. I see the little plus sign here, so I know that everyone, the everyone group, is allowed to change or edit the address rules. And I can go feature by feature, and I can see on the add edit categories, everyone is not allowed. We've got a little minus sign, so everyone is blocked on that particular feature. So I can do this in mass by just using the everyone group, or I could change this and I can add a group here and say that, all right, well, everyone is blocked, but this group is allowed to do it, or this user is allowed to do that feature. So I can pick and choose here what I want to assign here. And most of the time when you're locking things down, you're going to block everyone or you're going to allow everyone, and then you're going to block those individual groups or people at that point in time. So you're going to, see who you want to have the access rights and who doesn't. Now, something that is really cool in this view is that if I highlight a feature, I can also see some information about that feature and what it will do. So on the Find Templates, I can see that if I allow people or I block people, this is what I'm blocking them from, the ability to create and edit public search templates and search criteria. So these are things that are real nice that I can see what it is and what I want to block and what it's going to do if I do block them or allow it. And it also will tell me what rights everyone, this one everyone has rights to or doesn't have rights to. And if I had added a user, I'm going to allow everyone, but then I'm going to take a user and I'm going to say, and I'm going to do it real fast, so Paul, I'm not going to block her out of here, but I'm going to block her from the work zone to be able to enable or not. And now I can see that there's some rights that are in here per user, not just everyone. So I can see everyone is allowed, but Patty is blocked.
And I'm going to further point out that it gets so granular sometimes. Mary just said she was blocking her from enabling or not. Actually, disabling is one right, enabling is another right.
That's true.
So you can actually, on some of these features, get down to whether they can do one part of it but not another part. Very, very exact in what you can allow people to do.
Now I'm going to take this minute right now to tell you I've added this blocking of Patty for this particular feature, but if I exit out right now, I have not saved that. You do have to save the security before that to take effect, and then sometimes they even need to log out and log back in before they see that. So she might still have rights until she logs off and comes back in.
Yeah, that's
so
a huge one, because if you're an administrator and you're trying to lock people out of certain profile groups or certain documents or whatever, you need to be aware that in order for that to really stick, everyone has to log out and shut their computer down. Well, they don't have to shut down their computer, but that's the easiest way for them to get out of Worldox.
They need to close and reopen Worldox if they have rights to do that. Now, if you put a password in place, if they can't, then they would have to log off and log back in. Now, I'm going to also show you, since Patty is in here, maybe I do want, I don't want her to be blocked, so I can highlight her, just check the box here, and I can remove her completely. And just take that off, and it's going to ask if I want to remove the user. Yes, I'm going to go back to my everyone function there.
Of course, that didn't remove the function. It didn't block the function. We were removing the block.
We were removing the block from Patty.
Kind of confusing when you get in here. If removing a block is allowing something to happen. Adding a block is keeping something from happening.
Mm-hmm. So, Paul, you want to talk about profile groups real quick?
It would give me the greatest of pleasure. Now, profile groups, of course, we have client files. You probably do too. We have some that we've set up for ourselves, best practices. We have a confidential profile group. A lot of firms have this. I journal every single email, so I have an email profile group. Your profile groups won't be the same. However, who you allow to have access to them will. So if I say in confidential, I only want certain people to have access, well, what happens is we first block everyone, and then we add kind of a window through that block. It's like we've put up a big brick wall that says everyone is blocked from getting to this group, and then we kind of punch a door in that wall and give a key to the people that are in this group that we've added. Now I can add users and I can add groups. So remember, as I said, I could take this confidential profile group and I could add Leanne and I could add me, or I could add the group confidential. The reason I don't want to add me and add Leanne is that, well, Leanne may get fired someday, and we would want to, she's laughing, we would want to take her off and then add somebody else in, and there are probably a whole bunch of other things that are tied to Leanne, what features she can and cannot use, other profile groups that she has or does not have access to. And I would have to go into each of those and individually remove or add Leanne, and it would take me a long time. So instead, I make Leanne and myself a member of the confidential profile group. And when that fateful day comes, all I have to do is go into that confidential profile group, remove Leanne, and she no longer has any permission to do anything there. Okay, Mary Jo, you want to talk about ethical walls?
I sure would. So ethical walls are a step further than limiting it to that profile group. Let's say that I have a profile group of confidential or accounting. Let's say accounting, because that's probably a big one that you would see in your firm. And I have one user that is not allowed to be in anything in the accounting profile group except a document type of reconciliation or a document type of bank statement or something like that. You just want to allow access to one part of a profile group, or you want to allow one type of a document or a user or something within a client file. They can only see documents that they save for a certain matter or something like that. You want to restrict it down to a certain level that is more specific than just the whole client that they're blocked from or the whole matter or something like that. So you can actually build ethical walls to do this. So we're going to add one. So we're going to add, let's do the projects. And I'm going to say that the only one in here would be the author, and it has to be, I don't know, we're just going to say that's going to be the Worldox user. I don't know. We would have to lock this down. That's probably a bad one to do. Let me do the client. Let me go into client. So if we go into our client file, I can say that only doc type of email, for instance, is going to be either allowed or blocked. So if I wanted to go down into all client files and say that this had to be just this particular document type, I could do that. Or I could go further and just say, I could actually pick which client and which matter and secure it at this level instead of at the document level. Now we all know we can put security on each document when we save it. And we can say who has rights to that document. But what if it's the whole client? Do you want to sit there and have to do that every single document? And what if you forget for that document? So I could go in and actually do a whole client matter at once. So I'm going to go into a client. I'm going to pick a client. I'm just going to take a most recent one, and I'm going to block this whole client from everyone. So I'm going to say that everyone is blocked. They can't get into this client. And then I'm going to just add, in this case, I'm just going to add a user. I'm going to say that only Paul has rights to be in this particular one. So only Paul is able to access this whole client. Anything under that client, anything that's saved there, only he has rights to that. I could also do a group and say only this group. So if you have a litigation team that you want to just have rights to this client, you could do that. If this were the accounting profile and I wanted to punch down further, I could just say a certain doc type. Or even within this, I could still go further and say this client and this doc type no one can see. So it's just a way that you can get very specific on what you're blocking and not blocking out.
You have an attorney leaving. They're currently working on 10 cases. You ethically create a wall around them, and they can only see those 10 cases and nothing else.
Right.
You have a special client that only certain attorneys should be able to get to because they're highly confidential. You build an ethical wall around those attorneys, and only they can see that matter. Nobody else can. So they're used for a lot of different things. I really like Mary Jo's example of letting certain people in the accounting group get to the deposit slips or the reconciliation, but not all the other accounting documents. A lot of different ways to use this, and it's very, very powerful. And this right here is one of the many key reasons that Worldox is what people are using for document management. You can't do this in a Time Matters or a Practice Master type implementation of document management. You can try and do this on a directory level, but with just going into Windows Explorer, but that's very, very difficult to maintain and manage, and it's much harder to do than it is in this interface in Worldox.
And then the last part of group security is our path folder. We can actually add a whole path. We can browse out to a certain file structure here on our tree, and we can say that, I don't know, where do I want to go, Paul? This is our live, so I don't want to get too.
Yeah,
but you can actually, we can actually go into our document folder.
Or maybe a special place.
Yeah, and I can say OK, and I can say that it's allowed or blocked. So I can go right down to a path folder level and block or allow that way as well.
Now that's kind of the same thing that you can do with the ethical walls.
Right.
It's just a different way to do it. So most people don't really use path folder. Sometimes we as administrators will use path folder to achieve something that's kind of outside the scope of what you'd see in a profile group. Most of our users are going to be using ethical walls to do something like what you're describing, because if it's in a path or a folder, it's also part of a profile group.
Now, the other thing that I just want to be clear on these group security as well, we're setting this up within Worldox. If a user knows how to navigate to that path or tree in your Windows system, that's not blocking them from that. They can still go back around that outside way.
Well, however, we can hook Worldox into Active Directory.
There we go.
So if we do that, and that is a situation where us as Worldox administrators and your internal nerd or your nerd for hire that's managing your actual Windows network need to work together to get those two things to talk to each other.
Correct. So just be aware that that might be an additional step if you want to secure it outside of Worldox completely. Paul, you want to talk about offline mode?
I would love to talk about offline mode, and I'm not going to take very long talking about this. If you've seen it, you've been annoyed by it, and I want to let you know that there are certain things that you can do to not be annoyed by it. Offline mode means the Worldox server that holds all your documents is for some reason not available. It could also mean that the indexer has failed in trying to index rebuild the profile database the night before, meaning that there is no index available, and therefore it's unlikely that Worldox is going to find documents for you. Now, offline mode basically means we can't get to your documents, and you'll see this when you sign into your computer and Worldox tries to load. You'll get a message saying you're in offline mode, and I believe up at the top when you're in your Worldox document list, right in the title bar, here we're looking at a title bar that says WDADMIN, but you would have one that says Worldox. I think it'll also say that you're working in an offline mode. If I remember correctly, it's a parenthetical note in the title bar. What does that mean? It means you can't really get to your documents. You might, depending on the type of offline mode that you're operating in, you might be able to use direct access, but you certainly will not be able to use find. Here's find, that's the binoculars. Direct access is this file folder, and it looks different in different versions of GX2, GX1. But direct access may work for you and it may not. But what a lot of people don't know is that when they are in offline mode, Worldox is cached. That's a nerd term. It is saved a cached local copy of every document that you've used most recently, and there's some number of documents that it's saving, so it's not every document you've ever used, but the ones that you've used most recently are saved on your local disk. So if you go into favorite files when you're in offline mode, you will see those most recent documents, and you will be able to pull them up, and you'll be able to work on them and save them, and when Worldox becomes available again, Worldox will sense that you've worked on them and will automatically put them back up in the Worldox document folder. So that's kind of all I really want to talk about with offline mode. People don't know what it means. Now you do. It means that your Worldox documents are not available. It's probably a network problem. It could be a problem with how the index is built the night before. The bottom line is, to solve it, you're going to need to get some sort of a nerd involved, either your network guy or your computer guy, if it's a network problem, or us or whoever administers your indexer, if it's a problem that Worldox had in rebuilding your indexes. But the thing I really want to convey is that you're not really totally in the dark. You can still work on those documents that you had most recently accessed, because Worldox has this built-in functionality that as you're working on documents when it's operating in a normal mode, it pulls them down to your local disk to kind of create this ability in offline mode to get back to those most recently used documents. So that's that. We're not going to talk at the end of this recorded version about what's coming up next month, because as I indicated when we started, we are re-recording the Worldox VUG that we recorded last week because we had a technical glitch. I will, however, load our website and show you how you can get to these recorded versions. Again, you probably already know this, but because you're watching one, but all of our VUGs, our Tabs 3 Virtual User Group Meeting, Practice Master Virtual User Group Meeting, and Worldox are available on our website. And if you click on one, you'll see the registration information for the next one, which is still showing this one because we haven't gotten the recorded version up there, obviously. And recorded versions of everything we've done as long as we've been recording them. So for some of our virtual user group meetings, that goes back 3.5 years. Now we also have our Coffee Pot webinars, which are held every month. Mary Jo's eBite video series, where she takes 3 or 4 minutes and gets really into one very specific, neat thing that we've discovered and shows you how to use it. And our longer, broader form Paul and Mary Jo show, which, as I joked recently, is appearing in 2015 on the FX network. Not really, but it's our TV show format, where we take a topic and really kind of delve very deeply into it, and take 10, 15, 20 minutes to fully explain a certain concept or a certain function. So you'll find all of those at Attorney Computer Systems, remember the S.com. So everybody have a good rest of the day, and we'll see you sometime in recorded land. Bye-bye.